Today in the Newsmaker Spotlight, Brian Dieters. He's a newly announced Democratic candidate for Congress in the 18th Congressional District. That's the seat currently held by Republican incumbent Darren LaHood. He announced his candidacy in his hometown of Quincy earlier this week and joins us now here in the Newsmaker Spotlight. Mr. Dieters, thanks for your time. Great to have you here with us in the Newsmaker Spotlight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, first of all, because you are a new name to our listeners here in the Springfield area, part of which is part of the 18th District, please just give us a little bit of your background and history and why you're running for Congress.
Sure. Well, I tell you, Springfield's kind of in the middle of my experiences with the district. I grew up in Quincy. A lot of people recognize the name Dieters with the dairy there, which is my family that we had for many years. And as an adult, up until recently, I was outside of Peoria and Morton, where I was a teacher at Morton High School as well as a coach. My experience is an interesting one in that, as I'm sure some people have heard through the grapevine, my wife's job, she's with CAT, moved us to Switzerland. And so we've been in Switzerland the last couple of years. We're finishing up that tour of duty, if you will, and getting ready to head back home to the district. So I'm kind of on the west and the east side of the Springfield area with my experiences, and certainly spent a lot of time in Springfield growing up, whether it was just through travel or some of my experiences with soccer. So my focus is one as an educator. As I said, I'm not a politician, and I think with that comes strengths and weaknesses, but I do know that people certainly are looking for something fresh, something different in kind of the political heated world that we are currently living in.
It certainly is a unique situation, having lived for several years now in Switzerland. Do you feel like you're up to speed on what's happening both in the district and also actually in the Congress, in the Trump administration now, and some of the issues that are kind of dominating in American politics these days?
Well, the short answer is absolutely. And I think that one of the things that I need to convince voters, rightfully so, is that being over in Switzerland actually is not a detriment. It's been a big boost for what I can bring to the table. The one thing that I've learned being over here is we are very connected, whether it's through social media or the economy that we live in today. We're an intimate world. And living that firsthand is knowledge that I think I can bring back to the voters to hear me out. So I know in my heart that it's actually been a very big positive thing for me, and I think something that can be helpful.
So given your experience both as an educator and as someone who has seen what's happening in the world from the other side of the ocean, what will be your main issues then in this campaign?
Yeah. Well, what's driven me to this point, which is something I think a lot of people share, is clearly this atmosphere, as I was just mentioning, of division. We are in a state of cultural disconnect. As a sociology teacher for over 20 years, it's certainly something that I've been on high radar in viewing here, particularly last year with the election cycle. And, it's drawn me, like a lot of other educators, quite frankly, to get active. And so we've generated, just within the last 4 to 5 weeks, this very pure grassroots efforts to send a message of awareness. So with that said, certainly an emphasis close to my heart is education and how it's perceived in our district, in our state, actually, throughout the country. I think we're in a critical state. When you look at the statistics of people leaving the profession, of young people who are not interested in going in the profession, this should definitely make us stand up and wonder what the future holds for us. So that's a big part of it. Obviously, continuing to create opportunities for jobs for people throughout the district, being creative in that sense, whether that's through improvements and changes in farming opportunities to infrastructure. I know that even the traditional things such as bridges and highways are always important things, but we have situations on the Mississippi and in the Illinois where we can do a lot of work in improving some of the very damaged dams that have been there and haven't been touched for years and years and years. So there are a lot of opportunities for us to tap into. And then finally, certainly we need to be thinking about pursuing opportunities of equity, for all of us. That's something that I'm, as a social studies teacher and a history teacher, very in tuned in as well.
Talking with Brian Dieters, one of at least two Democrats looking at running in the 18th congressional district against the incumbent Republican Darren LaHood. I want to go back to the discussion on education, as you've talked about that public perception and the fact that teachers seem to be leaving the profession. What could you, as a member of Congress, do to reverse that? And what do you want to see happen as it pertains to current U.S. Department of Education policies under the Education Secretary Betsy DeVos?
Yeah. Well, I think the direction that we've headed to here lately is very concerning. That's my professional viewpoint. The privatization of things is really a dangerous situation because at the end of the day, it doesn't answer for a lot of the dysfunction that we see in districts, quite frankly, that are throughout the 18th district, particularly in rural areas. The thing that we need to do is raise awareness. A lot of people aren't even necessarily in tune with the fact that we have this crisis going on. I've been sharing this story. I've done a couple of other interviews today, and I think it's something that needs to be, kind of thought about. I've had, over the course of my career, certainly a ton of support, there's no question. But on numerous occasions, I've had people say to me, you seem like you're a pretty smart guy. Why are you a teacher? And when you think about that question and you think about the impact of that question, that's pretty powerful, and it's obviously very concerning. So I think I definitely would try to use my platform to raise the awareness of the importance of our institution of education, where it's heading, that it's not heading in the right direction. And at the end of the day, when we think of our experiences in school and we think about the positive experiences, it always goes back to the teacher, to the person that's in the classroom, guiding and motivating us to move forward. We need the best and the brightest to have a desire, to have an incentive to go into the field. I think it's a crucially important thing that we need to set in place. So, congressionally speaking, using that platform to create programs we've seen in the past, whether it's VSTO or American Core, things like this that are, trying to get kids, young people to go into the school. But at the end of the day, we need to have a rethinking of our priorities.
Can I just mention, because you said you have concerns about privatization, so would you be opposed to an expansion of voucher programs, something that's been talked about by the current administration? Is that something you would resist?
Look, I understand people's desires to pursue that route because they want what's best for their kids. And the reason that they want what's best for their kids and they want to pursue that route is because they're not happy with a lot of the situations in the schools that we provide publicly. So to me, we need to change that. That's where we need to change. Education since our inception is something that is perceived as a right. It's something that certainly, developed into a public model going all the way back to the early 19th century with Horace Mann. And we're kind of getting away from the importance of improving that aspect of it. Look, I mean, when you have schools that are in the state that they are, it might not be your district. It might not be the district next to you. But we are impacted by, the quote-unquote other side. And unfortunately, what has happened in this age of absolutism, which is largely, manipulated by media, is we are getting into this. It's us versus them. That's the other side of the river or the other side of the tracks. And at the end of the day, we're failing to understand just how connected we are, whether that is, for being overseas to literally being a couple of miles away. So that's the challenge. I mean, this district is one that is set up so that people don't necessarily have to directly think about that when you look at the alignment of it. And I just think people need to be aware of the situation at hand.
We're getting tight on time here. A couple other things I want to make sure we touch on real quickly. First is healthcare. As you've been living over in Switzerland, you've seen, I'm sure, a different approach to covering healthcare. What sort of system should be in place here in the United States? The Affordable Care Act, something more, something less? What do you advocate?
Yeah, I mean, again, let's go back to what when our country started, and they talked about in the Declaration of Independence, what are our inalienable rights? In my belief, our ability to be able to be taken care of with our health should be in that category. It's one that's certainly not a new issue to bring to the table, and it's always been one in America that creates controversy. The reality of it is it doesn't need to be something connected to a socialist versus a capitalistic kind of an issue. It needs to be one about, again, what are our priorities? We need to be able to provide in the United States of America, like the rest of the world of countries that have our stature and our strength, healthcare, affordable healthcare for everybody. So I'm also pragmatic enough to know that, there are a lot of intangibles. We're a country of 315 plus million people, and we're just trying to get this thing working. But the interesting thing to note is, ever since the efforts to really push to repeal the ACA, the statistics will tell you that people are realizing that that's probably not such a good idea. To answer your question, I'm in favor of anything that pushes us forward towards a system that allows affordable health care. If that even got to the point where it was, the single payer Medicare for all as it's being sponsored and just getting off the ground in the houses now, that certainly is something that we need to rethink. Certainly European countries understand the importance of it.
Real quickly, your thoughts on the current GOP tax reform plan that is pending in the Congress?
Yeah. I think, like a lot of people, we realize that this is all about blowing smoke. It's obviously being packaged as a middle class cut, but when you break it down and you read the articles, and not just liberal-minded articles, but conservative, I was just reading an article in Forbes. There's so many things out there saying that this isn't a good idea. This is about putting more money in the elites' pockets. So to me, it's something that is not the path that we want to head. As a history teacher, one of the things that is clear to me is that maybe well-intended but trickle-down types of tactics really don't work. It's been proven time and time again. We need to give the opportunity and strength into the middle and the working class. And even though this is being sold that way, a lot of the stuff, bipartisan and independent stuff coming out, suggests otherwise. So to me, it's a very concerning thing that's trying to be pushed through, and it's a very typical type of a thing that we see in this extremely heightened partisan Washington. And to me, that's one of the things that, as an educator, I would like to just really have a discussion with.
Brian Dieters, I apologize here, but we are unfortunately out of time, and I want to make sure we let people know how they can learn more about your candidacy for Congress.
Yes, please take a look at us at briandietersforcongress.com, as well as on Facebook. And like I said, we're just trying to get out our message. We have much more in common than divides us, and it's really time to heal.
Democratic congressional candidate Brian Dieters joining us here in the Newsmaker Spotlight. briandietersforcongress.com is that website. And again, thank you for your time here in the Newsmaker Spotlight.
Thanks a lot. Happy Thanksgiving to you.